Hi guys, this is Karli, and this is a submission with my younger horse named Raja. She is 5 this year, and I've just started working. I've had her about a year and a half, and we've mostly done the groundwork and the work in hand and the lunging. Not a ton of riding yet. I've sat on her a couple times, but nothing too much yet. If you've seen me before, I have a older gray horse who injured himself, so you won't see him in this video, but we're going to do it with this young horse today. I've left this initial clip in just so you can kind of get a little bit observation sense of what's going on in her body this day. So you can see the base of the neck is dropped and super tight. She's resistant in moving back. Her mental attention is elsewhere. Her movements are that tight, jerky. The shoulder, the tail, the back, the hind end is tight. It's all that really jerky motion that doesn't have that smooth quality to it. You can see the neck and head are up and braced. There's a little bit of like a lateral walk because she's not coming through her body. She's wanting to lean on me a little bit. Looking way at the other end, there's some horses down there and some things going on. So she's really mentally focused down there. So I wanted to keep this clip in, not only so you can get a little bit of an idea of where she was at today, but so you can get a feel of what to look for in the horses when you come in with them, whether you do this in the stall or when you get them out of their pasture. You can really do a mental check-in and take a couple moments to just breathe with them and figure out where they're at, so that you know what you're going to be working with today, where you have to go to kind of meet them where they're at, so that you can start to influence that and bring them down into relaxation and softness. One of the things that she thought was challenging today is that we were working in the arena for one of the first times. It just got cold here in Canada, so we'd been working a lot in the outdoor arena. So this is the first time she's been indoors in a while, and it was super windy. So she's just reacclimatizing to all those noises, all the movement, the horses down at the other end, etc. When they're young, they can find that quite overwhelming and overpowering to their senses, that with so many things going on, they find it difficult to kind of dedicate enough mental attention to you to be present in that space with you, so that you can actually start to get some work done. So here I've just flipped the reins over her neck, and rather than leading her around, we're starting to do the work in hand. So her difficult side is her left side. So I start by doing a little bit of work on the left side here and getting to a fairly good place. Not great, but enough that I can kind of get a little bit more mental attention, and then we work on the right and then go back to the left. So that allows me to work her hard side twice, just in small increments, and I find it actually quite helpful for her. She used to be quite spatially intrusive. She would like to sit in your space a lot, like she'd push her shoulder into you or move past you. So a lot of this introductory work that we're doing in the work in hand here is more for me about making sure that I've established that boundary where I can move her shoulder off. I think I missed the moment, but on the last circle I moved her shoulder off right about in this corner and made her yield quite sideways. And here we move her head off because she tried to get in my space quite a lot there as well. So a lot of this work in the very initial stages is both redirecting her mental focus to me and making sure that her physical body isn't interfering in my boundary and my space. And I find that to be the foundation that I need, especially for her, to continue to get the relaxation and the correct work in hand to progress. So here I try and stay quite connected to her, both in my body and my breathing. And by that I mean connecting to her where she's at, and then allowing that connection to create enough of a bridge to create influence, so that then if I can connect to her where she's at, I can then feel that tension and allow that tension to dissipate through accessing the inside hind leg. Not only does that posture and that stepping through of that inside hind leg allow the back to come up, but it's also submission and relaxation, so mental and emotional focus as well. And here you can see we're starting to get way more focus on me, and she's starting to soften her whole posture down, and her ears are on me, and her eye was beginning to be on me, and she's starting to soften her whole body. Now, this right now is quite slow. There's very little activity to it, and it's also very meandering. I'm not on a specific line, and I'm not keeping her on a specific circle line per se. And I've done this with a bit of intention, because if I were to increase the activity at this point for her, that little bit of tension that's left over, like let's say we started at an 8 out of 10 tension, or a 7 out of 10 tension. Now we're down to like a 2 or 3 out of tension. But I have to get her to a quite neutral place before I ask for that increased activity. Because if I ask for increased activity with her when she's still at a 2 or 3 in tension, it just builds her tension. It just adds to the tension, and we instantly go back up to a 4 or a 6 or a whatever it happens to be on that day, depending on the amount of pressure I use to increase the activity. So with her, I have to make sure that we're very committed to that relaxation place, so that I have a foundation to work with. So I do let her come into quite an inactive place at times to allow her to fully drain all of that tension and fully let go. And as soon as I feel in that connected place she's let go, then I can ask for a little bit more activity, and that I have something to work with and build on. She is a horse that has in her conformation, she's got a little bit of a short back but a very short neck. So for her natural tendency is to keep her head and neck straight up in the air. She kind of stacks her neck literally on top of each other, and then shortens all the muscles of her top line and tenses and drops her back, and gets very lateral in her motion. She moves very like left to right rather than forward when she's super tense. So for her in the beginning, to even get her to drop any of that tension and come into like a horizontal positioning where her pole was just at or below the wither was huge. She felt that a lot in her body. She wanted to take care of all the things around her. She wanted to take care of all the noises, all the horses, all the things going around. So even to get to that place was quite a big mental commitment to her. So we're going to switch directions here and go to the right side. I felt I got to a relatively good place on the left. She gave me enough relaxation and connection that I felt like we could move on to the right. I will go back to the left again after the right, so that I can build on that foundation of relaxation and actually establish a little bit more of a working walk where there's enough activity that we're gaining some throughness and some muscle, as what I had to begin with there was more of a mental relaxation and wouldn't be building too much muscle at this point. So here the right side you can see is way more connected initially. I'd also like to note that a lot of her tension, as you can see here, when we're on the outside of the circle, she'll look to the gate and fall out. So that's the side near the jumps here. And then the other side, she'll want to fall in and push her shoulder into me. And to me, more than dealing with that as a physical issue, like just trying to get her shoulder or her hip, depending whether she's falling in or falling out, either away from me, it's more of a mental connection to the work and being in the zone, because it's just her trying to leave to the gate. And here it was a really good corner. She stayed connected that whole side. So this side I begin again in that place of just establishing a foundation of relaxation that I can work with. And then here I begin to ask for a little bit more activity. And you can kind of see on that side of the circle, I did ask for a little bit more activity and it was slightly ignored. I didn't get as much activity as I wanted, and then I kind of got ahead of her. So then one of the things I've done here is just a little bit more sideways motion there to get a little bit more leg yield feel, so that I can get that activity with the hind leg stepping up and through under her belly. So here she's walking quite relaxed over her top line and more through than she was on the other side for sure. And there I lose her a little bit on that corner as she pays attention to the other horse, but she comes back way quicker to me. And we're finally starting to get a more active step that's going to actually start to develop a little bit of muscle for her there. And there, baby stuff distracted by the other horse, but that's fine. I just push her on, and this side I'm actually able to push her on and get a little bit more activity without losing everything that I got. So there you can see I came into that resistance as I pushed her on, but she didn't fully invert and leave me. She just kind of inverted a little bit and then softened into it again. So here's actually quite lovely. You can see that head bobble as she really releases that neck, and it felt really good and connected to me. And because I knew I was going to go back to the left side, I wanted to just reward her for getting to that place on the right side really well. So I allow her to stop there. And here you can see, even in her standing posture versus what we had to begin with, the neck is softened and lengthened out, and the ears, although are focused elsewhere, are still in a place where they're connected to me, and the body is way softer in its outline. So here we'll go back to the left side, which was where we started on the hard side. And she starts off in a way better place. And although it's not quite as instantly stretched as the right side, it's still better than what we had started with. So here I have enough of a baseline of her mental attention and relaxation that now I can ask for a little bit more activity, and it will promote a better stretch rather than causing her more tension. So here's quite good inactivity. She hasn't fully let go of the top line again, but the activity is better. So here we're going to use the activity to promote the stretch. So here, way better. She's got a little bit more bend to the inside as well that's coming naturally. That's not something I'm asking for. I wish we could see it a little better on this video, but I'm really trying to focus on keeping a loop on that inside rein, and keeping the contact fully on the outside rein, so that I'm pushing from the inside leg to the outside rein if I was riding. And here she comes through really well. We're both connected. I'm stepping with her, and she's really letting go. There is lovely. And that's the kind of walk I would like to start with. But today that didn't happen, and that's fine. It's good to see how to get there, regardless of what the horse gives you to begin with. So here you can see her really letting go, getting into the zone a little bit more. The hind foot is starting to step through. She's loosening that lumbar. The pelvis is getting a little bit more range of motion. And then I believe I'll soften to a stop here. And one of the things that I've found, or that she found super challenging in the beginning, was stopping. As soon as I asked for any whoa, she would just instantly invert and go into that braced posture and kind of throw her shoulder ahead of herself and her neck up in the air. So one of the things I've kind of really focused on doing is keeping the inside hind leg stepping away from me as I ask for that stop. So sometimes that looks like almost a small leg yield or circle as you're softening to a stop, but it's really been beneficial in helping me keep her soft and decrease her tendency to invert in those moments. So here we've switched from the work in hand bridle to a more of a lunging cavesson. So here in the lunging work, I start on the left side again, which is her tight side. And she actually does revert to a lot of holding a lot of tension, especially at the trot. And I could have filmed another day with her, but I think there's some value in seeing both the tension getting to a good place, and how to get there. So when I do switch the equipment and we go into that lunging where the circle is a little larger and she's out of my space further, her commitment to her mental attention to me is a little bit less. She's kind of more pronounced in her tendency to fall in on this side, the far end by A there, and then fall out or look especially to the outside around the other end. So both just showing that her attention is a little bit more on the gate than on me. So I just kind of increase my talking to her, both in playing with the feel on the cavesson, like the lunge line, and then using a little bit of activity with the lunge whip to get her attention back on me, and walking a little bit more purposefully to her on a larger circle helps as well. So here, patience being the key, not expecting to get exactly the frame and relaxation that I got in the work in hand immediately on the lunge line. And giving her that time and space to relax and to show up and come to me a little bit. So here's getting a little bit better already. She's starting to get a little bit of a more active step and starting to really commit to letting go of that tension, and as a result letting her head and neck fall a little bit lower in moments and then coming back up in moments, and that's fine. Just allowing her to give her the time and space to work that out for herself, and then really being very clear when she does come through, like in that corner, that that is what I wanted, and that place that feels good to her is where I'm asking her to go, so that then she both trusts me mentally and physically in her body, that I'm not asking her to do anything that's going to feel bad or uncomfortable. I'm actually asking and redirecting her to a place that feels good for her, both physically and mentally. So here I'm quite happy with this. There's enough activity pushing through that her hind foot is stepping up, pushing the belly up, and letting the neck and head fall out as a result. There, when she lets go even more, she starts to get a little slow and meandering there. And I allow that for a moment because her commitment to the relaxation was increased. So allow that and allow that answer to be correct so that she knows that that's correct, and that I'm not immediately pushing her on when she gives me that, so that she questions whether that was the right thing to do or not. So I allow her to just exist in that space for a moment and then pick up the activity again here. So here you can see there where she got a little wiggly young horse looking to the outside deal, and then when she felt the contact in the line again in that corner and got a little inverted as she felt that again. So here we go up into the trot, and she immediately goes back to her, let's say, natural posture, being that inverted short step, very lateral. It's quite instant for her. Even if she's galloping out in the field, her head is straight up in the air and her tail's straight up in the air, and she just kind of bounces on the spot rather than taking that energy and flowing it forward. So here she looks to the outside, head comes up, super inverted. You can see there's no shock absorbing on her front legs. The back is hard, the pelvis isn't coming through. She tries to stop a little and see if that'll be the correct answer rather than moving forward. So I just move her on again and see if I can get a little bit more influence over her body and mind to convince her that maybe letting go of that tension might be the easier thing to do. So I start to step a little bit more actively and get a little bit closer to her so that I can have a little bit more of that influence with her. And she still continues on hollow, and although she's moving a little bit more forward and on a nicer circle line where she's not constantly looking to the outside the whole time, she's still kind of in her own space, ignoring me a bit and not allowing that relaxation to come through her body. So I feel like I think it's about here that I've given her enough time to kind of work through that and tried pushing her on in a little bit more activity and a little bit more contact, that my next step here is to shorten the line and to get a little bit closer to her so that I can get a little bit more consistent contact on her mouth. So I'll bring her back to the walk, shorten the line, get a little bit more consistent contact with her so that I can push the hind end out more effectively, almost like the transition point between the work in hand and lunging. And here she goes, oh, okay, now we can transfer our skills from one to the other, and softens into it. So once she softens into it, I go right back to the trot and ask her to keep that frame, which she does quite well. She does bounce up and down between totally inverted and then starting to relax, but at least she's starting to give it a try and starting to come through there. And then the walk that we get after that is quite good. And then I'll see if we can get a little bit more trot here and get her to go out, expand that circle and flow it out a little bit further, and still keep enough influence over that posture so that I can maintain that relaxation and that stretch. So she does okay there. It wasn't great, and most days I would hope to get more, but with her level of commitment starting out with, and then what she gave me at the end there, I actually let her soften and stop on that, and then just hoping that we'll get more on the right side. And with the idea too that if I keep it short here, if I'm not getting to where I need to, I don't need to drill it into her at that point. I can allow her to soften and stop as soon as I do get her to the point that I want, and then go back to the right side and really establish that good side, and I can return to the left again if I need to. So we're just going to switch sides here and see what we get on the right. And a lot of this for her, I find at this stage, is more about mental fitness, getting her to commit to working, and being okay with working and staying with me rather than all of the horses jumping or the people cantering at the other end or whatever it happens to be that she chooses to be a valid reason that she has to look at that and focus on that and try and take care of that rather than be present in her work. So a lot of it I find is balancing that physicality with that mental fitness that you're always looking for, because if you can't get the mind to fully commit to you, you're never gonna get the body to follow. So here we can immediately see the right hand side is way easier for her. She immediately goes into a stretch, has that lengthened neck posture, and because she found it quite a struggle on the left hand side, I allow this first circle or the first couple moments to be quite just relaxed and allowing her to just stretch, not asking for much activity yet, just allowing her to breathe, allowing me to breathe, allowing just that moment of relaxation before we add more activity to it. So here, that was about a circle and a half, and now I ask for more activity. And you can see that activity decreases her stretch almost instantly. She kind of braces against it rather than allowing that activity to come up and through her body. She meets it with tension, although it does dissipate way quicker on this side. She allows me to increase the activity and increase that pressure on this side. So this is more of the walk that's actually going to start to develop her body. And then because the walk was quite good on this side, and I know that I do want to do a little bit more work on the left side again, I immediately I go quite quickly up into the trot, which she gives me so much better. I was even able to get a little bit of forward motion without her inverting instantly, so super happy with that. And because she's doing quite well there, she kind of asked if we were allowed to come back to a walk, and I did allow her to soften into that. I do play with that because she will often, when she stretches well, ask if she can have a moment back in the walk. And I do play with honoring that request at moments, and then some moments saying, no, not yet, we need to do another couple circles, and allowing those times to get further and further apart in a slow gradient, so that she still is very committed and enjoyable and finds the work enjoyable, but that I'm not constantly just letting her come back to the walk when she asks there. So now we got a good walk again, and we go back up into the trot. And this is so much more enjoyable to watch. The time passes so much easier when they're in this frame of mind. So before we end here, I just wanted to say, unfortunately, my SD card ran out of space. So it does end right about here, but we do carry on in this frame for another 3 or 4 circles, 4 or 5 circles maybe, on this right hand side. Exactly in this frame, she was in the zone at this point and felt great, so I just carried on and then quickly switched back over to the left side and made sure that I had this frame in the trot on the left side, and then we called it a day. But once she kind of hit that point where she was in the zone, all was lovely and wonderful, and she was now committed and we were in a very good space. So that's it. I wish we would have had the last couple circles there, but oh well. Hope you enjoyed it. So I decided to add in a screenshot at the end as a visual to get a little bit better idea of the changes that are expected to come and her current muscular state. So you can take a look and see what you think there. Thanks so much.